first podcast of the month of July. So as usual, since a few months now, the first podcast of the month is a recap of the previous months, both for the podcast in English and in French, and the YouTube channel with its different playlists. So, but first I'll talk about the word hunt and the few randomly picked words. Since 2005, for those who don't know, we've been taking 3 random words as pretext to go shoot pictures outside or anywhere. And basically those 3 words, you try to make pictures that could correspond closely or a little less closely to the signification of the word. And this month's 3 words are main, sister, and hotel. So it's a good occasion, either if you're alone, to go out and try to figure out something that could correspond. You can also create setups at home or in your studio. Or it's also a good pretext to go and join other friends and go for this hunt. And once you've got the pictures, you can actually also add the hashtag on front. So hashtag main, hashtag sister, or hashtag hotel. You can actually even combine all the words in one photo and publish them online. You can also add the hashtag PCLLTV and hashtag PCLLTV 202307 for the date if you want other people to find it. Anyways, you can do whatever you want with those words. It's just a good and fun way of creating pictures. And also for those who speak French, there's an equivalent translation for the words, which is principal, sœur, and hotel. So let's go directly to the dialogues of the previous months. So last month we started the months with the first photographer dialogue on the reasons of photography. Was with Torgrim Halvari. He's a Norwegian photographer who talks about his relationship to photography, both analog and digital, but how also photography is included in his life, and how as a part of the native people of the northern part of Norway, he's been documenting his native culture. Very interesting episode in my opinion, and really super interesting to hear Torgrim talk about how he does photography, how he experiments it, and what importance it has in his life. Then the second dialogue was kind of an experimental dialogue with ChatGPT. Interesting talking with artificial intelligence. So that was kind of a setup where actually I let AI speak through a voice synthesizer, and we have a dialogue about what are the relationship between AI and photography and what it means. Weird dialogue, but where AI will actually give himself a name, a pseudo, and kind of compare itself to himself to a famous photographer. So yeah, that was kind of a weird episode, but I kind of enjoyed it and pretty fun. And the last dialogue of the month was with Russell Cobb, a photographer who has studied illustration and photography, that talks about what brought him more seriously into photography, the relationship to other people, how the loneliness of the illustrator is kind of different when you do his kind of photography. So for example, he does revivals and also takes pictures for the Goodwood Revival Festival. So a really interesting and fun episode with Russell. As for the French podcast, for those of you who speak French or are inclined to go look at the automatic translation beneath the video, there were also 3 photographers. The first one was Charlotte Ebb. She's a Swiss photographer, and she talks about her relationship to film, to digital photography, her own work, how important her passion of photography is, and talks about how she creates apparatuses for experimental photography. That was the first one. Then we had, in French, same thing. We had ChatGPT AI talk with French, basically the same voice, but French translation. Interesting, it's not exactly the same answers, so definitely the language transforms things. Quite interesting in that sense, and maybe also we can realize that the maturity of the voice synthesizer I found for the AI is maybe a little bit better in English. So yeah, if you speak French, interesting to listen to maybe. And the last photographer in French was Vincent Calmel, who talks about his passion of cinematography as a younger kid and young adult, and how it went and transformed into a passion for photography. And now in his career, it goes back to movies. And yeah, he talks about that relationship and lots of other stories. So super interesting dialogue too. Then if we go to other playlists of the YouTube channel, we can first start with the serial. Like every month, I talk about the photographs I've taken the months before or edited. And here with this month's serial, I went really kind of in every direction, from glamour and fashion photography, using film and digital. So there's lots of weird 35mm film like Berger, Pancro, black and white, Polaroid HDF, 100 ISO expired film, Fujifilm also, APS film, Foma Retropan 320, Japan Camera Hunter 400 ISO. Yeah, I go kind of in every direction, using all kinds of cameras from the Leica Z2X, which is a point and shoot, but also the Voigtlander Vito C, and the Olympus XA, of course, which I almost every month use for some kind of a work or another, and yeah, the Contax T also, which I'm testing. That was for the film cameras and some lenses, and also medium format digital with the Leica S series, both CCD and CMOS, the 006 and the 007. Also some full frame SL2, and also foveon sensors. I'm doing some tests, so I do quite a lot of photos using foveon sensors in the last month, and here are a few examples. So that's serial, and then again on my own practice, talking about computational photography with MatNum. And yeah, MatNum is basically, I go in the same places than with serial. Nothing really extraordinary in that sense, but I think those MatNums in the last couple of months, I had less coding, I would say activities, but I'm more into the testing of my modules. So lots of illustrations of the photos I've taken with my own software, how I try to think about finding new ideas for new code, new modules, new filters, new ways to transform data, photographical data, and yeah, still traveling around, which I do quite a lot. That was for MatNum for the last month, but nothing really new otherwise. Mainly a discussion about the works I did and trying to validate the work already done in terms of computational photography. Then in the other playlists, one playlist that obviously is always of interest for you listeners, actually you viewers, is the first one is the VonCam, where I talk about equipment. So a few shorts talking about basically Nikon, FM, FA. I won't go into the details of those, but there's a video about the Hasselblad X-Pan, a review of the camera and examples. I've been using this camera for quite a long time. It's a 35mm film camera, panoramic, and here I show a few examples. I talk about the equipment and show a few examples with the three lenses that came with it, the 30mm, 45mm, and 90mm. It's quite a mythical camera, so that was the VonCam, the first VonCam of the month. Then a VonCam freestyle, which is I tried to create something a little bit more, talking more about the equipment I'm working on for a future episode, VonCam episode, which I go more into the detail with examples. And here I talk about my current experience testing 7 Artisans and TT Artisan lenses, but also a lot about Olympus cameras. I've been using the XA, for example, for a long time, the small 35mm point-and-shoot rangefinder, but also about the Micro Four Thirds digital versions, the Pen F, which is a half-frame reflex camera, before Olympus became OM Systems. And then also I talk about the Foveon sensors. I've been trying 3 cameras mainly. It's not exactly true, but an SD10 DSLR, the DP2X, and the DP2 Merrill cameras, which have those Foveon sensors, which have a very special kind of color rendering and micro contrast quality. I also forgot, the last VonCam. That was the Pentax PC35AF. This point-and-shoot autofocus. Really interesting camera where I go through the technical details and also some of the results both in black and white and color. Then there's AIs Hit. AIs Hit is this series about AI who tries to explain and illustrate famous photographers. So for the months of June, we started the months with, that was the first photographer, which was Trude Fleischmann. Quite interesting to see how AI kind of tried to explain the style and illustrate this photographer that's originally from Wien in Austria, that moved to New York, and they took photographs of celebrities and nudes with lots of illustrations. And it's an AI point of view, but it gives us maybe an idea of the advancement of AI in terms of becoming realistic and copying, let's say the word, famous photographers. The second AIs Hit was Lee Miller. So this episode about this photographer, which was originally a model and photographer. She became horror photographer too, and also a fashion photographer. I thought it was a quite interesting episode with some really interesting renderings, both from, again, every time I ask ChatGPT for the information, for the data, for the better or the worse, and then Dall-E and Midjourney for the illustrations. That was Lee Miller. Then Imogen Cunningham, which is also an interesting episode about this photographer who's at the junction of surrealism and pictorialism. I'm not sure. Again, no real revolution in the rendering from month to month, but always a nice, how would I say, refreshing of the information about those photographers. Even so, it's not always very true and well documented. That's the culprit with ChatGPT. Then we went to Hans Bellmer. That was the last AIs Hit for the month. And Hans Bellmer, the interesting episode, because Hans Bellmer, for those who know his work, is very focused on those bold joint articulated dolls, and so his work is really very specific. So it was interesting to look at how AI explained the work and also illustrated it. And there's some pretty big differences, in my opinion, between Midjourney and Dall-E, kind of revealing what's inside the black box. So yeah, quite an interesting episode. For me, I find it pretty entertaining. So anyways, and that was about it for last month. So next week we continue with the dialogues, and see you soon.